up? What up?
Yo, what's happening, man? How you doing tonight?
Man, this is a little bit of voice I got.
Preach your voice away.
And you know what happens when preachers walk up and get hoarse? We just preach harder.
Preach harder.
We're like, look.
We're going to make it work.
We're going to show y'all how dedicated we are.
The devil trying to stop
the devil,
me.
Listen, the devil not going to get the victory today.
The devil don't want this message to come forth.
Listen, I was on that this morning. I was like, mics go out. The devil ain't going to get in this mic. Battery go dead in your car. Devil ain't going to stop me from getting to work. I'm like, nah, you need to change your battery, doc. You need to go to we put the devil in everything. You know the point I made? This is my preaching point of the night. We put the devil in more places than we put God.
Oh, definitely. Absolutely.
Like the devil is everywhere. You know, if I drop my bags in the grocery stores,
the devil. It's the devil.
We love the devil.
Evil is good.
Christian evil is good. Christians love the devil, boy.
They will blame him for anything.
They blame him for everything. Hey, Pastor Tatum, everybody.
God bless you. Good night, good morning, good afternoon, whatever it is.
Jeff doesn't know what time it is.
I'm so tired. I don't know where.
Jeff is on Grayson time. Baby Grayson doesn't know what time it is, and Jeff doesn't either. Hey,
absolutely.
Like, share. I'm doing a Twitter share right now. I want everybody to tap in, share it on your timelines, you know, your Black Planets.
Tap in.
Your MySpaces. Y'all share this at the NBA All-Star game that you're really watching right now. Okay, before we get into how about we'll just talk about sports and Black stuff.
Let's do it.
Do you think the sports leagues are overdoing it with the Black stuff? Like they had the HBCU. I mean, I'm just saying, I don't think they would have done any of this if it wasn't for the Black Lives Matter movement. And I'm not saying I despise it. I love seeing it. Yes, we need the good mother of the church. Actually, I have some. The mother of the church gave me some cough drops. I have some cough drops and church mints. But do you think it's pandering?
Can I give you my honest opinion?
Yeah.
Can we be honest up in here?
Go ahead, be honest, man.
First of all, I did not ask for a Black halftime show. Second of all, I did not ask for a lot of these Black things. But what I did ask for was reform, prison reform. What I did ask for was, the gerrymandering to go away. What I did ask for is the prison pipeline to be addressed.
This is Black History preach.
You know what I'm saying? So though I think what they're giving us is pacifying us.
But do we enjoy it though?
We definitely. I'm definitely enjoying it.
Didn't get paid.
No, they didn't. I mean, I'm don't get me wrong. I enjoy it, but I just don't want it to be the end all of all.
I agree.
Did they throw us out a biscuit and we feel like we all right now? So that's
somebody's gonna say, why don't we have a white school colors game now? Just like, why don't we have a white history?
Because they can't play basketball. Wow.
That is correct. But so we didn't ask for it because that's what a lot of people said about Juneteenth. Like, we didn't ask for you to make Juneteenth a federal holiday. We asked for reform.
Right.
But we'll take Juneteenth, right, and we'll take that holiday, and we're glad to see it in the psyche. So I celebrate the fact that there is more Blackness on the main stage, which brings us to the main stage of all main stages, Super Bowl. What did you think about the Super Bowl halftime show? Because apparently there is a game that happened during the Super Bowl halftime show.
A what?
There was a game that happened somewhere around the halftime show because it felt like the whole production was about the show and the game was like secondary. So what did you feel about the Dr. Dre West Coast?
Well, I mean, that's my era. Obviously, I love it. I have no problem with it.
He's a sea walker.
I will do my sea walk, get my sea walk right.
He sea walked into my house during the Super Bowl. And then my dad jumped up and started joining him. No, I'm joking.
The one thing I will say, let me say this first of all. I love this halftime show. Second of all, what I'm gonna say is all y'all get off my man 50.
Get off 50.
Get off.
Get off.
This
50.
man got millions and millions. He don't care about his physique no more. I mean, take it from somebody who used to be built. Take it from somebody who used to be built.
He's eating good. We should be happy about that.
Hey,
he's eating good. I mean, that means he's been, another culture, the bigger you were, the more.
Snoop didn't look like the little crackhead that he looked like when he first came out.
Like an old crackhead. He's still skinny though.
But he got a little belly now.
Snoop is starting to look like Jafar from Aladdin. He's starting to look like Jafar. You should have played him. I liked it, but I couldn't show how much I liked it because my dad was sitting right next to me. And so Dad was like, I don't know none of these folk. And I'm like, me either. I don't know these people either, Dad. No, it was cool. He sat through it. And
Marlon, you're right. He repped for all the dad bods. All the dad. We here, baby. We repping 50.
So does that mean Mary J. Blige was repping for all the anti-bods? I love Mary. But what she is she not the ultimate auntie though? Man, she's the flyest auntie.
Yes, she is. She didn't do her dance.
She didn't do it.
That was disappointing.
Now that was disappointing to me. I wanted to see her do one of her wild boot stomp dances with the kick.
Yeah, absolutely.
And she didn't quite get there. She didn't quite get the Mary J. Blige Holy Ghost like she normally gets in her performances. It was too small. She would have fell off the house.
When she fell at the end, I was scared. I was like,
now that. Now, I just feel like somebody said we should make Mary do this so we can have a new meme. Because that's what we have now.
Yeah. Absolutely.
We have a new meme now, and it's Mary slayed out. And some of these memes were not appropriate, but they were Mary slayed out. And so I thought it was.
She said, thank God all of New York was glad she did.
All of New York was glad. New York was holding their breath the whole time. Don't do it, Mary. So I'll say I'm always glad to see Black culture on there. Of course, we all know who's going to hate the halftime show.
Absolutely.
We all know. There were angry MAGA hats everywhere, all over
Giuliani's still mad.
Giuliani's mad.
M took a knee. So
we don't even know what the knee truly represented. It's a debate at this point. Was it Tupac? Was it Black Lives? A little bit of everything.
I think it was a little bit of everything. I mean, it made sense. It's where it started at. Right. with the football, right. with Kaepernick. It's where it started at, and I think it's appropriate, and I think it was time appropriate for that season.
Kendrick went hard. I love Kendrick.
I don't know what he is doing. He's doing his thing.
I would invite Kendrick to do praise and worship at my church if he does that. I'm dead serious. I'd probably get away with it. I could probably get away with that.
I couldn't, but yeah, you could.
Because, even when we have like our Christian rappers, they don't know what they're saying anyway.
They absolutely.
You ever had little boys in your church do like Christian raps and stuff?
Come on, my son-in-law.
Your son?
Come on.
Aaron, more Aaron, he's done it. Uh-huh. They don't know what he's saying. They just be like, all right, baby. God bless you.
Amen. Let God use you.
Here's what I like to say. For all the people that complain or say it's too sexual or promoting drug culture or whatever, why is sex, drugs, and rock and roll okay when it's white people? Because all that is our version of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. It's what it is. You're supposed to be sexy. Mm-hmm. Obviously they're talking about doing drugs. Maybe it's because white people don't talk about selling drugs. White people just talk about doing drugs.
And biting snakes off heads off snakes.
Biting birds. Ozzy Osbourne.
Right. So, if they can do what they do, AC/DC, let us do what we do.
It's safer because it's them, man. Pour some sugar on me.
What?
You never heard that?
No.
Tell me, man.
That's my favorite Bon Jovi.
Pour some sugar on me. You got to go to the white school like we did.
Yeah, I have no idea what y'all talking about. Pour some sugar on me.
If you go up with these white people, you'll come back to the hood and be like, this is tamed in a mug, man. Because they just out there taking their mama's real pills from like the actual doctor right out the IV,
right?
And just craziness. So I say celebrate. I don't want to see it every year. And you all know it's got to be country western extravaganza next year. You might as well just get ready. It's going to be, they already had Tom Petty, but
what was cool though,
Mike's saying something.
And how you could tell it made an impact because nobody's talking about the commercials.
Commercials were pretty whack.
Everybody's talking about that.
And we don't have time to talk about the commercials, but I'll just say that we're going to look back on these crypto commercials the same way we were looking back on those .com commercials from 99 and 2000. We're going to be like, what were we thinking? Because they had one commercial that was just a code bouncing on the screen, and you were supposed to scan with your. To who?
It was the most creative.
My grandma was confused.
It was the most creative.
She said, my grandma called Time Warner and said, something's wrong with my TV.
It was the most creative.
It was creative, but again, I think it's going to turn into, and I'm going to have a whole nother conversation.
And we need to have a whole nother, whether it was the cryptocurrency or McDonald's buying stuff in a multiverse. I mean, it's like.
I still need McDonald's to bring back the Calvin commercial before Black History Month is over.
Snoop got ribs in a multiverse. I mean, Snoop, I'm like, how do? Yeah. I mean, can we buy something in there? Can religiously incorrect buy something in the multiverse?
Electric vehicles are here to stay. All the commercials were for electric vehicles. So maybe the Valley is back.
Maybe if they open one up in Lordstown, I'll support it.
I'm gonna fall apart the first day. All right, y'all. You know what time it is? It's time for Meme of the Week. We're not going.
We're right there.
Cause Meme of the Week. Meme of the Week.
Welcome to Religiously Incorrect, ladies and gentlemen.
Meme of the Week. Meme of the Week.
Thank you. Send us your memes of the week.
Meme of the Week. Meme of the Week.
We are. These are all jokes. We are just playing.
That was a part of the Super Bowl show too. All right. When your mom includes info about you and her testimony that you didn't want people to know about. I thank God because little Gigi used to wet the bed. I prayed for him.
He came home and he was itching down there.
He was itching. I took him to the doctor. God is good, y'all. I can't talk because I be my kids are like my go-to in my sermons now.
Yes,
they have to sit there and take it. But there is a such thing as too much testimony.
Absolutely.
There's a such thing as too much. That's why we don't testify anymore, because people just tell too much.
And we have to literally
cut the mics. We have to
pull
them off.
We have to pick people to testify.
Did you see the one video of a woman testifying about all the sex acts she used to do?
Yeah.
I can't repeat that. But that's also on us, because if you know somebody's not all the way there, why give them the mic?
Because it's testimony time. You can't stop them. You can't. You can. You can't just be like, no, you ain't allowed to testify.
Yes, you can. Marlon said he was a victim. He said he had all of St. James looking at me like all of St. James was looking at him. Marlon, St. James looked at all of us like we were sinners. One time I went to a church as the guest preacher and they looked at me like I was a sinner. I was the guest.
Y'all come on off the back here, see the sinner.
Listen, I'll never forget. I tell the story all the time when me and Tony went to a church, and I will not call the name of the church, and they had a guest preacher. And that man, we walked in with sweatshirts, and they were like the nice sweat. They weren't hoodies. They were sweatshirts and jeans. And this dude saw us come in, and we were the only ones not dressed like saints. And he went in on us for like 10 minutes. And it was like, Christian, y'all need to be saved. And I'm so glad these young men came in the back because they need to hear this message. And the preacher had to tap him on the shoulder. It was like, that's Brother Todd and Brother Tony. That's Pastor Johnson's sons. They're ministers at their church. And it was just him profiling. The church is profiled.
Profiled.
We were profiled.
You were profiled.
I need to tell my story on Lifetime. Yeah,
you were racially
profiled. I was spiritually profiled.
Wow.
I was spiritually profiled. So that's real. When you are a parent, and parents don't mean to do it, because now that I'm a parent, I say stuff and I'm like, okay, I probably shouldn't have put my kid out there like that. But I buy him ice cream and it's okay. At least we didn't like put him on the altar and stuff and scream at him.
Yeah, my wife has always told me I say way too much and I use way too out.
Use the family too much.
Yeah, I use the family too much. But hey, it's my truth.
It's your truth.
It's my truth.
It's time to tell your story. So check it out. If you want to send us the meme. Now here's what I will say. We all see the same memes on Facebook. So make sure yours is good. Send us a good one. Because there's a good chance we already saw it. So don't be, disappointed if we don't put yours up. But you can send your memes of the week to our Facebook, Instagram inbox, or email us at religiouslyincorrectpodcast@gmail.com. I wonder how many emails have gone to a misspelling of the world's longest email. We probably had like Kurt Franklin emailing us at the wrong email. But it is what it is. Let's move on and thank our sponsors and welcome our guests. First of all, we thank Phillips Care for being sponsors, the cleaning service. They do residential and commercial floor, basic cleaning, deep cleaning, carpet upholstery. Call my man Fernando. He's not only a classmate, but a peer, and he's doing a proud Black business. Check him out, 330-219-7916, or on Facebook. And while you're at it, snow is starting to melt. You might as well start thinking about your lawn. Get that lawn plan ready for the summer. Get those leaves raked. Get those hedges done. Call Phillips Care Lawn Services. Lawn care starting at $30. They've been in business for over 10 years. This cat was working when we was in 6th grade. He was working. Call Fernando.
Always been a worker.
Look up Phillips Care on Facebook, Phillips Care LLC. Tell him Religiously Incorrect sent you. You will not get a discount, but tell him anyway. If you'd like to be a sponsor of Religiously Incorrect, send an email to the world's longest email, religiouslyincorrectpodcast@gmail.com, or inbox us. Matter of fact, we have a sponsor sign up form now, and we're going to be posting it up this week so that if you'd like to be a sponsor on this show as we build our audience, you can be a part of it. We're so excited for our guest. She's Warren's very own soul sister.
Yes.
Now, my auntie Jenny is soul sister number one.
Okay.
Now, Aunt Jenny is soul sister number one. You can't take that away from her. That's my militant auntie, and I love her. But Lea is a wonderful, wonderful person. Go ahead and delete that mic. Thank you. Lea is a wonderful individual who's definitely been in the struggle. She's intelligent, gifted. She works as an assistant principal and as an all-around advocate and educator in our community, and doing big things for our generation. We always say that new generations need to step up. She's definitely one of them. And our show today is called It's Complicated.
It's complicated.
I had a church mother once who joined Facebook, and under the relationship status, she put, "It's complicated."
Not a church mother.
It was Sister Mamie. It's complicated. I said, it's too old for you to be complicated. If you and Willie Earl don't get it together, if you and old Willie don't get it together, ain't much time left. But we're talking the tension, and y'all excuse my voice. Y'all see I'm a little hoarse here, so he's gonna cut my mic up. But the tension between the Black church and the Black culture.
Yes.
Because things are not what they used to be. And we need to talk about it. So would you all in Religiously Incorrect land welcome Miss Lea Dotson to the show? What's up? What's up?
Hey, how you doing?
How you doing?
Happy Black History Month to you.
I know it's winding down, ain't it?
It is, but we're going to keep it moving. I want to thank you. Lea did a wonderful presentation with Andrea Hudson and Terry West about special education in the Black community with our children, IEPs, 504 plans, and she did that 3 weeks ago for us. Thank you again for that. We've been getting great positive feedback. I know you got some stories about people that have reached out to you. So just go to Second Baptist Church Facebook page or YouTube page and check out those videos about special education, insurance, life insurance, that is. And yesterday we did employment. But Lea, tell us a little bit about you. Just tell us a little bit about, your journey. And we want the short version, we want the testimony version, just what you do, what inspires you, and what your outlook is, considering our Black culture.
I don't know. I mean, born and raised, born in Ohio. So I guess since we're talking about, religion, I always say, whether people agree or not, I always say, I think one of the best things my parents did was they didn't beat church over my head, because it allowed me to kind of grow into what I thought for my own, with kind of void of doctrine. And that was for me. That might not be for everybody else, but that was definitely for me. And happenstance, I actually, because I was allowed to kind of grow into it, I actually joined church when I was 14, and joined church on my own. But we was not the church family, but I still always kind of, I was drawn to it. Joined the church when I was 14. I guess my role as like who I am as far as my people, I just had good parents. I mean, I just credit my parents with everything. Like we had the whole sit down, eat dinner as a family, and my mom was militant. I had a militant mother and a loving, kind of love everybody father. So I heard them debate the evening news, and my mom was militant. My dad was love everybody. So it informed a lot of who I was. So I've always kind of grown up kind of more socially aware than I think my peers. So at an early age, it's just been who I was. And then I went to school and I was like, first generation college kid. I'm like, immediate college kid. I mean, I had my auntie, but I didn't know anybody who in my house. And so I was like, what do I go to school for? And I was like, I'm Black. I like Black people. I'm gonna go to school for Black studies.
Right.
And went to school for Pan-African Studies and got into community development, community organizing, and then transferred that into my most recent career of education. And that's where I'm at.
Awesome. You made a comment that just segues us right into the conversation for tonight. And for all of you watching, our conversation is centering around the intersection of the Black church and I want to say modern Black culture. Because traditionally, or at least most of what we consider historic Black culture from basically our time over here, and let's just be honest, introduced in a large part to this westernized, Europeanized version of Christianity, and yet still making it our own in a way. We have looked at the Black church and the Black culture as synonymous. And one of the things that we're finding in this day and age is that they are not so much the same anymore. There is more distancing. Leah's experience appears to be the experience of many more people. But you said something about they didn't beat me over the head with religion. And I think I just talked to an older brother, won't say his name, and he basically was like, my mom threatened me, go down there, it's your time to get baptized. You're 11, go down there. And I am afraid that there are probably a lot more people that want to admit it, that their faith was at least initially based on some adult saying it's time.
Absolutely.
Almost like a rite of passage. And I don't want my kid to be the one looked at as a heathen as they're getting into middle school or this or that or whatever and pushed. So you said you weren't pushed, it wasn't beat on you, but was there openness and respect? Was there a negative view of church or like this pushback against religion in general? And what do we call forcing these days? Is it just saying, hey, our family goes to church? Hey, this is what we do? Or is it like really beating, you better believe what I'm saying? Or is it at least, hey, this is what we do and where we go? So what would you consider forcing? I'm just asking from your perspective. And what would you consider engaging maybe, or just saying, hey, this is our family tradition and what we do? Where do you think the line is drawn?
I think the line is drawn with, and I don't know, I can only speak from my experience, but I think there's a definite line drawn in the aspect of not questioning. So I didn't grow up in a household that we didn't go to church, but it was not like I had an amazing aunt who was like a phenomenal woman of God, just preacher extraordinaire. So I always had her in my life too. That just wasn't what we did. It felt more, I think the way that I grew up is that we knew that there was a God and it was talked about, but we were relieved of dogma. Like we didn't just grow up with a lot of dogma, but we were like the Easter kids. Like we would go to school, we go to church on Easter and Mother's Day, but we didn't go to church any other day. But I think the factor that allowed for me to kind of grow was that we were always allowed to question. It wasn't taboo. And even when I asked my father, why don't we go to church? Because we're Black and, Black people, that's our culture, is to go to church. Like that's something that, even though that's not how I grew up, it still makes no sense to abandon it and have a weird view of what our history is within it. But even when I asked my father, he was crystal clear that his came from trauma. He didn't force his kids to go to church because of some trauma he experienced in the church. And he said he just wasn't going to subject his kids to that. But it wasn't like we just didn't know God or that we were atheists growing up. But he was very clear. And I mean, that had to be some deep trauma. And he told me about it. It's some deep trauma for him to, say he's not subjecting his kids to church. But that's what we grew up. And my father's anybody who knows my dad know he is an amazing person, but it's just something that our parents, we were very open and we were allowed to explore that on our own.
So 14 years old, you finally went on your own. And obviously, I don't know what church you went to, and we're not naming any
Grace and
churches.
me.
Okay,
Grace
amen.
and
All
me.
right, all right, all right. But what was your experience of it, and what do you think about church right now?
I loved it. I went to Grace and me, and loved it. I actually went for a boyfriend because my boyfriend was heavy in the church at the time, and his mother.
Makes perfect sense.
Yes, and his mother, who is like still my surrogate mother, wonderful woman extraordinary, like an angel in my life, Mrs. Williams. She was heavy into church, and honestly, and I think that's where I get my worldview. So again, I guess to your point, I honestly this is just me. God works through so heavy through people. I still don't place the biggest emphasis on God or Christianity or anything on buildings or structures, just because I recognize that the God and people is what always got me through. So Mrs. Williams, I saw her light show so bright. And she was the first person that I saw that was like not mystic like my aunt, just keeping it real. Like she made church so real to like whatever you was going through. And she just was, we talked about everything. And she always knew how to bring religion into like, you know, you going through some depression, you sad, you hurt, you got to get over it. So she, you know, Joy, she made it real and still was able to be, you know, she was just the first person I saw who was real about it. And it drew me. And I went to Grace and Me, and I stayed there throughout my whole, you know, until I was like maybe 22 years old. And then I went to college and came back and was like,
Right. There's the transition.
Oh, yeah.
And before we get into
There's
that transition, I want everybody to know, I know Pastor Todd's dad is a pastor, and he grew up in the church. But he wouldn't be in the church right now if it wasn't for Shamika. So don't let him fool you.
Listen.
It wasn't for Lady Shamika, he would not be there.
I played that organ extra hard when I went to Shamika. I love it. No, I love that. And I think that's a typical testimony. And even the college experience, when you are exposed to ideas in some frame or another, and your framework of how your mind works. And honestly, there's nothing wrong with being in that protective cocoon for a season of time, because you do need to be molded and you need to be surrounded by certain values and traditions and even disciplines and routines that would anchor you. I think that's helpful. I do think that it is said, and it is true to a point, that there are some people who are just like, this is what you do because you're Black. If you believe in God, you must do X, Y, and Z. Even if X, Y, and Z is not explicitly commanded, because it's the way we express ourselves and it's the structure we've created to be close to God, we expect everybody to come to that particular structure. And I don't mean physical structure. I just mean structure of the way we pattern ourselves. On the flip side, then you do have the physical structure where the church is synonymous with the building. And I struggle when people and Lea explains her feelings. A lot of people are more on a tack line, like almost snarky, like, I'm going to church because the church ain't the building. And I'm like, yeah, you know, I get it. You don't need a funeral home to say goodbye to your loved one either, but you about to call Sterling. So,
or you should. If they don't stop supporting, well, let me not.
Right, let's get on that. but the other side is that the church has provided infrastructure to the Black community. And sometimes it's the only infrastructure. And I think one of the parts of the modern tension, and I feel it as sort of a bridge figure, and Jeff and I are more like bridge figures because we're old enough to remember the old and we've been trained by the older ones, is that I think there's a bit of an offense from people like, yo, we built all this for us and now us don't want to be here.
Right.
Like, Black hands built this. There was a time where this was all we had. And sometimes I'm a little tense between my more militant brothers and sisters who say things like integration harmed us, or there are some certain downsides, I guess you could say, to integration.
Absolutely. And
that the interdependency, the need for an independent space. We need our own this, we need our own that. And I'm like, yo, bro, we got our own church and you don't go there. Like, how you gonna go to your own grocery store, your own school, And so I think really, and again, it does come back to that automatic Christianity that everybody's Black supposed to be Christian, but we are like, but this is about the only thing that is still in existence, strong, as weak as it is these days, is the Black church. And do you see a need to at least respect that reality, or at least continue or find ways to, in a healthy manner, continue that? How does that fit in the 21st century when we can go anywhere and do anything? At least supposedly.
So, I mean, I don't know. I think cause I don't know. I guess I had to just take it a step back to me personally, just because I kind of went through every stage in that development as possible outside of that hurt stage. But I think there's stages in which people go through this whole process of abandoning the church or whatever, but people get stuck on stage free and never elevate past it. So I think that once people come into whatever feelings that they have about why they're not going to church or accepting some our culture as opposed to church. So you hear things some things that are maybe traditional African or just being more in touch with our culture or seeking things that are spiritual and not so much in line with the church. They go through these stages, and one of the stages is you feel like I was lied to because it wasn't, I feel there was more out there. I hear you say all the time, the Bible can't be your only book. You got to incorporate some other stuff in your worldview, or else, and I think people get disenchanted because they now I'm hearing all this other stuff in college and it never it's not jiving what I was told in the church. And that makes people angry and hurt. And then they move into abandoning and they take that hurt out on the church, and folks just get stuck there. Right. So they just get stuck in that area of just being mad and angsty and just wanting to lash out. And then you have other people that just want to say stuff because it makes them sound revolutionary, and they have no depth in the thought in what they're saying. So, and I think once you move past that stage, that initial stage, you look at things more holistically and looking at the church for what it actually is historically and practically. Because even if you move into that thing where you're more spiritual, that people focus so much on the message or they miss the message. So and I challenge people all the time, and it's just even if you have that relationship or whatever about church, are you listening to the message? Because there's beauty and there's a real message in anywhere that you're at. So it shouldn't be that type of anti feeling. It's just people get stuck and they just want to create buzz lines instead of being practical. The church is still our biggest power base in our community. And I think that there's organic ways. I see Second Baptist do it where there's ways to reach out across the aisle and just realize everybody's not coming to be a Christian, but at the same time, everybody can still come under the same umbrella for the same things. And I think there has to be more of that kind of reaching across the aisle and bridging those gaps to move forward. But I mean, just recognizing where people are at with it. But I think people just get stuck in stage 2 and they never progress past it. And unfortunately, that's the type of vitriol that we see when we look on Facebook and we see that angsty just fussing about the church. And then when you dig deeper, it's no deeper than taglines. If you really get them into talking about what is the problem and what okay, you abandoned Christianity, but what do you feel about God, and where are you at? Where is your life? Is your life enhanced that much more because now you don't go to church? What is it that is pulling you away, and what is you replacing it with? And they can't go no further than that. It's just a way to make themselves feel better, either about themselves or either they just clout chasing,
But is there a truth to a lot of what some of these people are saying, that in antiquity, the church, especially in particular in the Black community, is not the church of old? We are not doing, and I'm not saying all of us, obviously we know Second Baptist, myself, there are various churches who are, but is there a truth to the fact that, community organizing, activism, the church being the powerhouse in the community,
being black
is not.
There's too many Black churches that act like they're afraid of the word.
We're
black.
Not doing anything anymore. You're right.
I'm like, why are you afraid of the word? The white folk ain't coming. You black.
You are a black church in a black community.
So maybe to bounce off Jeff's question, I think is the modern culture even looking for that? Does it really matter to them? And I guess there's a pastor in every city or 3 or 4 that's like, yo, but I'm doing all the work and you still ain't coming. So was it really about the justice? Was it really about opening the doors? Was it really about that? Is that from your perception and conversation, or would people just rather pursue spirituality on their own terms and not even be associated with the church? Or is it because they're just such a toxic, image? Because we talk about the traditional church and its role, and we know many of our churches are not playing that role. They're just kind of having services,
right?
Or competing to be who can be the modern, the hippest, the this, that, and the other. But does going back to the model of the activist church or the community-centered church, does that actually pull a new generation into seeing that could be an important part of their lives?
I think it's both, and I think there's a segment of us that's just gonna talk and just not. I mean, we was out there doing stuff and raising heck and being community activists and church folk or not. It was 10 of us. So how many people are really truly interested in social justice anyway? Like again, I think people do a lot of talking and not a lot of moving. And I also think people just don't like accountability. So I'm not sure if I think that there is a group of people that no matter what, they just not gonna move, because it just is what it is to be kind of anti, and that's okay. But I do absolutely feel that there is also a larger population that's more like in our age group that's saying, if it is not relevant to what's going on, or if it looks like it's impotent in any way, we are not attracted to that. We're just not.
Right.
We're just not a generation who's attracted to the same message. So unless the message is can coincide with what it is that we're seeing in everyday life, it's just like, how does it add value? How does it add value? So
and I understand the problem I have is with the ones who are what I like to call street pastors, where they get the crowd, where they can call up a bunch of people and they come outside and they'll say such and such died, let's have a prayer visual and this and that, but they won't involve the church, who actually has the tools and the means to make a difference. And is it because, once again, the churches aren't doing that activism, or they just feel like they're better off? And a lot of these people are not well spoken, and I no disrespect to them, but they're not well spoken, and so they don't get the attention of the mayor, of the city council, those, because what they're saying is more street talk than it is what we're actually looking for to get things accomplished. So those type of people, I mean, what do you think about those type who just, they want to have these street meetings and they want to have, this and that, but they don't want to involve.
It feels like people are trying to have church without church.
Exactly.
Like it's like a trend. Like, we gonna have this empowerment brunch. We gonna have this. We gonna have that, and we gonna do everything you would have did
in church
at Bracefield Baptist, but we gonna do it at Eluzio's. And I don't know. It feels weird. Like, I don't know, because we contend with that a little bit, because we get the calls, what Jeff is talking about, and we walk up and we're called almost like we're a public official because we're a pastor, right? And then we walk into an atmosphere and we're like, what is going on? Who is this person that just says, my name is Prophet Jones and I know the family? And you're just like, but the people, and I know this get ugly, they don't know what legitimacy looks like.
That's the right word.
And I'm not saying there's some hierarchy to, I got a degree, so I'm legitimate and real, but literally people can just put on like the prayer hat for like 2 seconds. And a lot of people will just follow that track, and that person might not have anything of substance to offer in the long run. They're just kind of there because they're somebody's cousin.
Right.
I guess that's what you're
absolutely
dealing with. Do you see that like as a dynamic, like people in our day, especially the younger ones, will just kind of run to anybody that's talking spiritual in a moment, especially grief, obviously?
I guess I think there's a lot of people who know how to speak the language of for better lack of better words, the streets, right? So I think there are just people who just in that instance and in that moment, because we're very reactionary in situations like that.
Right.
But as we see all the time, we have a problem with sustaining and sustainability. So you find in those moments, you find people who know how to speak the language and speak that language of emotion and all of that. So you do find people that will get that type of attention for the moment, but the sustainability, which is the foundation, is missing. But I think, just to be honest, if we having honest conversations, I'm not sure if the masses are seeing it. You know what I mean? So as far as coming into like 2022, that whole build it and they will come, they just not gonna come to church unless we figure out a way to like broaden the reach, meet people where they at. And I know that's kind of a buzzword, to meet people where they at, but we ain't talking about putting tents on the corner and having revival.
Thank you.
Right.
Say that again.
Absolutely.
Say that again for the people in the back.
Yeah, we don't respect that, because we not coming. You just gonna have your church members on the corner in the hood. That's not what happens.
Come on.
So we not talking about just throwing up a tent in the hood and bringing some hot dogs. That's not what we talking about. When we say that we don't see it, we don't see it. So it has to be really authentic ways that you weave yourself into the community in order for you to get that respect. Because what we will say is that even though that person may not be articulate, maybe that 14-hour corner prophet is not articulate, but he's there. That's their people. He's with them.
True.
You know what I mean? He's in the community. He knows things about the community that we don't, or somebody else wouldn't, or a pastor may not. So unless that church is involving themselves in the community in an authentic way, not that old savior, come to the hood, that's condescending, to be honest. Like, it's just like, we know you don't live here. Don't come and bring our kids no hot dogs. We gonna take them and eat them, but at the same time, that's not
Right.
that's not translating into any authentic relationship. So unless you have it's just like with anything else. Unless there's a relationship, there's you're just not gonna net those results. So but the thing is, I think we have to do a better job of again, like tying those gaps. There's a place for that person that's connected to the people in a way that the pastors may not be, and it's a way for them to bridge that gap. But it's too much rhetoric and too much it's too many memes and too much rhetoric, and there's this age of anti-intellectualism that extends all the way into the church. So it's cool not to go to college, and it's cool not to be a part of Christianity, and it's cool. Like, these things are cool now because I feel like they like self-esteem boost in a way where it's just like, I have a place where I don't have to feel bad because I didn't do these things, and now I'm gonna tell everybody who did do these things that y'all whack because y'all go to the white man's church and follow white man's schooling and all of this mess. But I mean, I think that's reflective of sometimes other people's self-esteem in situations, and not reflective of really deep thought on what these community dynamics look like.
I agree wholeheartedly. And I mean, it can come off cynical coming from a pastor, but I am a product of my culture as well. I'm a product of this social media experiment that we are all rats in right now and have been for some 10 years. And I see a lot of crowd chasing and clout chasing. And the fact of the matter is, we're seeing almost a flip. It used to be you chase the crowd and you chase the clout into the church. Now you're chasing the crowd and the clout out of the church. 1 million people, you ask my secretary who's been there for almost 50 years, 1 million people joined Second Baptist because it was the place to be. You just joined the church and showed up and got your name on that roll. And that's why every family, in some way or another, trace themselves through our church. And people would just join literally because you couldn't be somebody or seen as legitimate unless you were a member of somebody's church. Now that online clout chasing is still happening. where I feel like people are repeating, like you said, the rhetoric, the memes, the cliches, the clapbacks. You know, I saw, and we talked about this with what's the little rapper's name, the Old Town Road dude, Lil Nas X.
Yeah.
So I've seen this meme, and hilariously, a couple of my members actually shared it. The only sin y'all ever talk about is gay people. The only sin y'all ever talk about. And I'm sitting here like, I'm 39 years old, and I literally cannot remember the last time I heard a sermon about homosexuality. I'm not saying there ain't some cats still out there doing it. I'm not saying that. But it's been a minute. The tide has turned. People are not getting up there talking about
At all.
Adam and Steve and blah, blah, blah. Ain't nobody saying that no more. So I'm like, where are you hearing this at? Who
From
is saying
themselves.
this?
Because let me let you know. So
legitimacy
Yeah,
to
we over here. We got all the gays in the corner.
we
Right,
give more
so-
legitimacy to it.
So here's the thing. So it's a lot of woke folk who are very much homophobic. And the crazy part is you find these same woke folk that are extremely homophobic. And as soon as you bring up homophobia, they go right back to that Bible. And it's just like,
Yep.
you know, them is the ones that I see pushing the homophobia more than I've been in any church.
I heard a pastor say it.
I mean, it's the same kind of hoteps that are very much like the queen, goddess, mother. You know, the black woman is God. You know, homophobia is not a black people; it's a white man's thing. And I'm like, you don't know your culture. But
Right.
still, it's just like that is pushed way more in the woke community than what I've seen it thus far in the church. So this is the problem that we have. I think that there's the narrative and then there's the truth. And I think that, you know, there has been some very, very specific and some very, very real things that the church really does have to take into account if we want to be able to juxtapose Black culture with, you know, what's going on in the church and Christianity, because there are definitely some gaps that people are not going to be able to get over as far as like, you know, when something is brought up, there's no longer being able to live in, well, God is mysterious and you can't question because you ain't supposed to know. No, that's going to turn, you know, because we're going to question, and it's okay to have these deeper conversations and not, you know, and really dig into them. Since everybody want to be a Bible scholar, dig into those conversations sometimes. It's not to be had over.
Well, I want to interject into that because I think that's another one of those sayings that aren't wholly accurate anymore, but because they were so prominent, like we all know what it's like to grow up in the don't question God era. Don't question. And or there's just some things you won't understand. Ask Jesus when you go to heaven. You know, I'm gonna ask him all my questions. I mean, I heard people say that. I'm gonna ask him all my questions. But the fact of the matter is, I've even watched older seasoned guys become softer in their approach because they watched people walk away with that no questioning. And they're more willing to be like, you know what? That is a tough question. But I think the breach is already so big that the people who have those questions are not even walking in to ask them anymore.
Right.
They're not even walking in to, and to Harmony's point, you could put her comment up. Your girl is on, your sister's on. And she was saying that a pastor literally just gave that sermon. I'm not saying that a pastor doesn't preach. I'm not saying that we see them. And the funny thing is, we sharing these memes like pastors like, yo, y'all still talking like that?
Right.
The vast majority of pastors are like, come on, dude. I can name one right now that's he literally like rode this horse because he was sticking out because of how hard he was being about sexuality. And he's like, he was doing it for attention at that point, basically. And his own bishop was like, we don't affirm this cat's preaching, but apparently his people love it, whatever. I'm just saying that the tide has turned, but honestly, the culture has already pivoted. So it's like the tide has turned in the church because either a new generation has come along that operates different, or an older generation has seen what they've lost doing what they've done. But while the tide is turning in the church inside, the culture already pivoted outside.
Absolutely. And just to go back real quick on what you said about the don't question God and don't ask these questions. We have to understand that even if they don't ask us as pastors, matter of fact, it probably would be better for them to ask us because Google is right at the tip of their hands. So they're getting the answers that went, and they might not be the correct answers.
Google is dangerous.
And it is, but it's a lot of the people's Bible. It's a lot of their, it's a lot of their theology. Google can tell you everything you want to tell you, and they'll tell you tell you it in 12 different ways. So
Right,
it's better
right.
for us to try to answer these questions.
I just be like, I don't know. But keep coming to church. Sometimes I'm like, hey, I don't understand, or maybe there's somebody smarter than me, or maybe God help me. The Bible just don't touch on that, and
Yeah,
there is no answer.
Absolutely. We talked about that today.
One of my professors literally said, if the Bible is quiet, you need to shut up.
Come on.
If the Bible's quiet about it, you need to shut up and stop trying to make stuff mean stuff. And so that's so I feel that the new generation that wants to engage more honestly is suffering from the reality of the old generation and then perceptions of a new generation outside the church. And I want to talk about that a little bit when you talked about the cliches. I'm watching a generation of Black, now say young adults like 40 and under, that are getting their information about the church from everywhere but the church.
Right.
Like their idea of church is Tyler Perry church scenes. Their idea of church is Greenleaf. Their idea of church is the memes. Their idea of church is the church of laugh,
Right.
And
Kevin.
I never thought I would see a time where I see, and again, I know everybody's not spiritual, but I never thought I'd see a time where Black people look like white people trying to act like Black people.
Wow.
When it comes to church. But that's what it's turned into. Because if you're raised in church, even if you're not really into it, you just kind of have that soul and that feel. You know how to fake shout. You know how to pretend like you into it and clap on beat. I've never seen so many younger Black people like looking so cornbally like Jim Carrey or an SNL skit talking about we doing church. This is da-da-da-da. And I'm like, nah, sis, nah, bruh. That is some Play-Doh, Keebler elf looking Disney-fied mess, because it's like when you're so far removed from that place, you almost lose the soul of it. Even your music, Black music, even in the world, used to almost sound like the soul of church. It sound Al Green and Aretha Franklin and all the way up to Blackstreet, all the way up to R&B we were raised on. You could remember when every R&B artist had that one gospel track at the end. They had that one, thank you, Jesus. Little I just banged all these chicks, but thank you, Lord, for giving me this gift. And they sing that one that little Amazing Grace line. But now I feel like by being so detached from the church, that's a part of Black culture for a lot of our young people, losing a part of their souls.
So I think just like we do in education, a lot of times I think we focus really heavy on the stratus of where we at, right? So if we're talking about church, we have those who are in church, then we got a whole bunch of missing people right in here, and then we got like these ones that's like, that we see in the most need and the most at risk, and it's like we go from here and we jump way over here to try and help, to focus our attention on, like I said, throwing tents up in the hood, trying to get trying to get some converts from street corner ministries.
Yeah.
But there is a group of people like right in here, and those are the ones who are like, and this isn't an elitist thing. This is just, I'm being real. I think there's a segment of people you're not going to get no matter what. But there are people who are like legitimately disenchanted and looking for something. They're not anti-church. They're not anti, but they are searching for a deeper level of spirituality that right now the church is not hitting for them. So there's those people that's like, maybe I did go to school, or maybe I'm just going to work, but I'm working, I got money, I'm taking care of my family, and we ain't going to church. You know what I mean? And not only are we ain't going to church, but it's just not even something that's really on our radar. And I think those people are a lot of the people who are neglected when we're having these conversations. And those are the people who have, the ideologies where we're very much able to negotiate our two worlds, but nothing is speaking either way. And I think those are the people who, when we're talking about building our power base in our communities, because the church is still a power base of organized people and organized money. So if anything, those things that we always saying we want to happen, getting those people involved so that we can move those things. But what exactly does that look like? Because I think when we're having these conversations, we totally miss over those people. And I think that there's definitely a disconnect. I can even say for myself outside of, but what draws me is social action. Like, I can't go to a church and sit in a pew and Black Lives Matter is happening and y'all don't say anything about it. Like I literally can't sit in the pew and listen to a pastor and you are not talking about that. Or, you know, there's real live things happening in the world. As for Black people, I can't sit in your pew and listen to a Black pastor not talk about those things. But that's me personally. But then you have people that's like, you know, I need like a deeper level of spirituality. I'm looking to connect in a deeper way that even overshadows a lot of all of this stuff. Like I just really want to feel connected to something and I don't. So I think those are some of the conversations. That's why you see like the crystals, and that's why you see like, you know, the meditation. But you know, meditation is just prayer. What's the difference? And I think once you get to a certain level, you start to see like all of these things have such similarities. But they're just not talking to each other for whatever reason. And I think that's the problem. So you get one hand of people that's like totally dismissing because they're looking for such a deeper level of connection. Like, and then you have the church that's just, how many times I done seen, and this is true, like I'm seeing this from church people today, you don't need no sage. You don't need no sage. You just need the Holy Ghost. And it's just like, okay, you just gonna keep turning people away because what is it about the sage? I mean, what's the difference between the sage and the frankincense? What's the difference between, you know, a lot of this is like traditional African culture. And we woke up to knowing that we had a culture that either existed pre-Christianity or existed in symbiosis with Christianity. And we are not about to just negotiate that. And I mean, just give that up for the sake of, you know, because we have heard in our ear that the Christianity is the white man's religion. So if you have heard in the back of your mind that Christianity is the white man's religion, and then you go to a Black church and they are not authentically Black, it's a disconnect. Right. So so examining like what really is the dogma that's the most important, and what really are we really communicating out to just Black people who is looking just for a really deep connection of spirituality.
I think preachers are at a loss, and Christians in general are at a loss because we think we're offering that deep connection, and we don't know, huh?
Oh, go ahead.
And it feels like there's this abstract idea where people are seeking something that they don't know what they want, and we don't know what they want, and we're not sure how to find it, because what we know is worship, prayer, fellowship, hearing a message that inspires, instructs, maybe corrects, whatever. And that prayer time, that, by the way, that spiritual person that's seeking something different, that spiritual person who's seeking something different, if they came to me right now and I said, well, let's pray, or they asked me to pray for them, they're going to walk away or say to me, to my face, I really needed that. That really made me feel connected to God. And I think some of us are like, there's this disconnect of consistency and continuance, because a part of Christian faith is that connection is built through consistency, not through this one firework epiphany moment that unfortunately the church does teach, because it's become so performative. And I went to the meeting one night and I got the Holy Ghost, and how come you ain't got it, and all that kind of stuff. And sometimes other religions, including our Muslim brothers and sisters and all, they teach a different devotion, that I'm doing my prayers every day and I'm doing this, and I have these standards and I have these morals, and we don't do this, we don't dress like this, we don't eat that. And sometimes that's more respected. But when the Christians have a certain lane of behavior or patterns, they're like, oh, you're just trying to trap me. Now, I'm not saying everybody trying to be Muslim, because they ain't, but they at least seem to be more respected because they know that those patterns are a part of their connection. And maybe it's just me, and you can tell me, it feels like this new era of spirituality is so abstract as to almost be just whatever somebody feels in the moment, or just a cast off to say, at least I ain't nothing, I'm spiritual. But they probably really don't have a spiritual practice. And the only reason I can say that is because most Christians don't have Christian practice.
Absolutely right.
They don't. Most pastors know that so we know how spirituality works. It's good to talk about. It's good to label yourself with. And I feel like the spiritual crowd is the new Christian crowd. It's something they're claiming, but not really practicing.
Right.
It is, you are 100 and 100. If there's 110, it would be 110 because that's the thing. And but to me, I think that comes in the way you hit it on the head for me, because people who have not been to church or don't go to church, they're operating on like an idea of what they think church is. So when you have that performative narrative and you look and you see like that performative thing, you think that you're supposed to be hit with like an epiphany of like I don't know, solace, or you're supposed to have this big epiphany of whatever that is supposed to like move you from A to B, or you just, you felt it. But that's what they think, a lot of people think is supposed to happen in church, and because that's not happening, but that is what the church is looked at to provide, you know what I mean? Or we talked about it before, maybe you don't know God like I know God. Look, I've been to church my whole life and I've never shouted ever. That's just
Right.
not who I am.
We're gonna work on that.
Yeah, I feel connected. I've just never shouted, but I feel connected. But it's that performative thing, and they feel like, okay, well, what am I doing wrong? But it's the same thing with anything else. Like, there is no really grabbing spirituality without a sustained practice. That's why, like, when people are talking about like meditation and crystals and sage, when people who do that for real, they do it every single day. They do it in the morning. They do it. It is a practice. It is something that's sustained. So I think part of the problem is that I say all the time, there's a lack of teaching of teaching in the church, to me, that makes it realistic for people. Like, there's still like a I don't know, like that needs to be like expressed, that this is something that's like, you have to like really commit. Well, I mean, I think churches do say that you have to commit, but I mean, it definitely is a performative element to it. And I think people read into like thinking that that's the experience that they're supposed to have, is this performative element that they see, and it's just not reality. But the people who I know who do really follow like African spirituality, and that is a practice. That's not something that they just say. That is literally something that they do, and they wake up and they pray, and they have regiments that's what they do, that connects them to a deeper sense of like peace and calm. But that's, to me, again, what would be the difference between that and a Christian just saying, I'm gonna get in my prayer room and this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna pray every day. This is my connection time. I'm gonna build that connection. But because people aren't talking and people are like anti, because I feel like if I do this over here, I can't possibly respect Christianity over here. Y'all doing the same things. It's the exact same thing. It's the exact same thing, but people just don't see it as such. And I see that, and I see both sides being guilty of that. I see the church being guilty of that, and I see the woke folk being guilty of that. So,
right.
I mean, it's been a great conversation. I think what she said, it resonates with a lot of us, because I think, like you talked about the Muslims and the regiments that they have. And I think a lot of times we feel like a lot of other religions may save you from the water, but not to the boat.
Gotcha.
And I think oftentimes we offend people by saying, well, you're not in the boat, but at least you're out the water.
Yeah, right.
And so
like you got some standards.
Yeah, you got some standards, you got some morals,
right.
but
but you
ain't in
the ark, you ain't in the Lord yet.
And obviously we are, we're Christ-centered, Christ-centered, and that's Christians. But I think what she's saying is, by us doing that, a lot of times we miss that second tier. Is what she was talking about. You got that first tier, and then you got those people we go out into the homes and try to put our stuff, have our church concerts at. But I mean, we have to get to that second tier of people.
Well, I've talked about this frequently, that the church is always fishing in the gutter.
Absolutely.
The church is always fishing in the gutter. And it's not, and I get it, there's been absolutely biblical. You help the least of these. And so we're like literally trolling for crackheads. But literally, that's what they're doing. They're literally trolling for kids, crackheads, and broken people. And that's why they're always setting up tents by the hood. And they're like, okay, you're so broke. And now we see white churches doing it. And we're offended, like we weren't already doing it for 60 years. But we're forgetting that there are Black professionals,
Absolutely.
Black coaches, and I started telling my church, like, I need to preach to Black intellectuals. I need to preach to Black college professors. I need to preach to people and talk.
As if they don't need Jesus.
Well,
as if they don't.
Not as if they don't need Jesus.
I mean, if there's biblical precedence, Jesus told the people who've been fishing all night, launch out into the deep.
Right.
You're always in the shallow.
Yeah,
you're gonna get this shallow stuff. So we have to launch out there.
I've even preached that I understand and have respect for that brother who's not a Christian, but is a father and a husband and responsible and doing the right thing. And he is a real man to me. And that the biggest, especially with men, and I'm grateful because we have a strong men's group at Second. And I say them all the time. I'm not saying I wouldn't like to have more preachers and deacons, It's great to have people help, but I don't need more suit wearing, tambourine playing. God help me. I need working brothers, dirty fingernail brothers, still trying not to cuss sometime brothers. I want you to live clean. I want you to do the right thing, but it's the everyday man and the everyday woman, and not just, again, some broken person who's running to the church every Sunday for an opiate of relief for a minute, but somebody who wants to make their life in church. They see the value for their children. They love the connection. They see the networking. And real belief. I am not just trying to make the church another networking room. I do want them to come to genuine faith.
Absolutely.
Like any other religious person would. And I do wish we had that respect, because the church is so automatic in background and wallpaper to the Black community. It's such a farce to people that those of us who are trying to be genuine, this is what I really believe. Farrakhan really, truly does believe in the Prophet Muhammad and Elijah, the messenger. He really does. And I really do believe in Jesus.
Absolutely.
But I don't believe it in this fanatical manner that I'm trying to sprinkle some magic Jesus potion over you, and that's going to make your life much better. And everything you've ever done is a waste. You're not a good person. You're not a good man because you don't know my Jesus like I do. Now, do I think he enhances everything and makes that? Yeah, I do. I do believe that a relationship with God can make all phases of life better. But I feel like we have to stop demeaning that in between. I literally target, and I don't mean to be funny, I'm like looking for good brothers. I call them the fringe brothers. Like, they're doing good work, but they're probably not a part of a church.
Right.
And they already got the ear of the kids. They're already coaching the kids. They're already working somewhere. And I'm like, yo, how can we partner up? And I even got a plan for doing some things in our church. Like, some of our fellowships need to stop being church fellowships and just start being community fellowships.
That's good.
That anybody can come. We have brotherhood. We get 30 Black brothers in a room downstairs once a month. I want to get 60 Black brothers, and I can care less if the other 30 are members of Second Baptist, because there is no other meeting space. We're going to say our little prayer. We're going to sing our little hymn. And all we do is kick it after that.
Right. We just
all
gonna
we
talk.
do is
we
kick
just
it.
Gonna talk.
And so maybe my call to the Black community is put up with the fact that we are still Christians. We're not going to stop being Christians. We're not going to stop talking about Jesus, but also look at all of the good and positive things that we have to offer our own community. Let's be honest. Our kids are not better off totally detached from church altogether.
Not now.
I don't believe they are.
Not in this day and age. So I think, so when you say that, I have a question. So
go ahead.
So my question would be like, so that's definitely what has to start happening. I just don't know how to negotiate. I just don't know how to say it except but to be blunt about it. So say it. Even if there are people, because this is just who I am personally, like, there are certain doctrines that I'm just like, no matter what, I just can't negotiate in my brain, and that's okay, right? However, I still absolutely love going to church, because whether, it's not something that pastors like to hear, but really, I'm a eat the meat, throw out the bones type of person. Like, if I don't understand it, I'm like, I got to come back to that. But there's still more positive there than negative. So I get it, and that's where I want to be, because I feel the positivity and the pouring in is still it's needed. However, how long can the church negotiate having that as part of their body? Because it feels like it would be I feel like it would be like a conflict of interest. Like, it sounds good, but I feel like, how long would the church be able to sustain that, to have people that's like, you know what, I really don't believe the way that the church believes. Because
Yeah.
technically, I mean, can you call me a Christian if I'm not, so how long can you put up with, the fact that I'm gonna be completely honest with the fact that there's certain things within this doctrine that I just cannot jive with. However, if it's about the work, about me putting my money together, if it's about me, getting in here and doing for the community, if it's about that fellowship, I'm there. So how do you negotiate the membership of those two organizations together? Because that's what it's gonna be.
I think there's a certain level of security that the church and the minister has to have, because here's a reality. We have lifelong members that in their hearts don't really believe some of the core doctrines of the church. They'll never say it because they know better than to say it. They'll never say it. But on the flip side, is that person, let's say a Lea, comfortable with attending, but never having joined or joining the religion by confession? Because most of the churches, there's a confession. It doesn't matter if you're Catholic, whatever, Christian, Protestant. I am confessing Christ as Lord and Savior, crucified, resurrected, blah, 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 blah. And I would not ask, and I wouldn't want anybody to ask the church to compromise its doctrine for more engagement with people. But would those people be comfortable if they choose to keep coming? The gospel's not going to change.
Right.
The potential for activity and the community-based things that we all want to see happen might grow and should grow. But I think it would be disingenuous to ask of any religious person to abandon the core functions. I don't think you're asking that.
Right.
But to abandon the core functions of what they believe in the interest of Black unity, for instance. Right. So I would, man, any woman, any person can attend the church, but I'm grateful for people who are honest enough to say, you know what? Membership in a church is a covenant relationship based on a confession of Christ. Mm-hmm. So actually being a member of the Christian faith, a person is welcome to attend that church where lots of people come to church to get what they need. And it's not necessarily exactly what the church is serving. Mm-hmm. My cousin took my boys to Ponderosa, and who still eats a Ponderosa, but God bless them. And they ate like one taco, one chicken wing, and 3 bowls of ice cream. Because what they really wanted was the ice cream.
Right.
That's not Ponderosa's main thing. It's their little fake steaks and them chicken wings that don't taste the same anymore. But that's what they wanted. So I'm willing to engage. And I think that's where mutual respect comes in.
Right.
Black culture has to stop expecting the Black church to be anything less than a church first.
Right.
We're still a church first. We believe in Christ first. We preach the gospel first. And sometimes that aggravates people. They're like, Pastor, you did that session about employment and you did that thing about insurance and you've seen the post and I've seen the post. In somebody's world, that should be every single Sunday morning. And I really shouldn't even crack open the Bible and I shouldn't even talk about Jesus. I should just have a new empowerment session to help Black folk and do financial literacy. But I am not an empowerment guru. I'm a gospel preacher who happens to also believe in the empowerment of my people. Yes. And I understand that the Black church is one of the primary means of that happening. So my question is, in the same way that Farrakhan is a Muslim first, mm-hmm. Can we respect a Black pastor being a Christian gospel preacher first? Mm-hmm. And that means that the majority of the church's energy is still going to go into Christianized things. Mm-hmm. And that those other things will always be a part of what we do. I say this all the time. Many of our churches are quite democratic. So as many folk are coming is probably the way we're going to flow. And I've literally said, if more activist folk come, we're going to be more activists.
Right. Absolutely.
That's the way it's going to go.
Absolutely.
But I'm never going to stop preaching. I'm not saying anybody wants me to, but you feel that flavor. You feel that tenor that people kind of want you. You need to close down these churches and open schools. Negro, you won't buy a sweater from a Black vendor and you're talking about you're going to support a school. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the fact that the Black church is still the only self-sustaining entity financially that has been able to maintain itself. And yeah, it's weaker and smaller in financial hardships, but them folk, and still a small percentage of them, So all y'all think we stealing your grandmama's money, please. Your grandma ain't got enough money for us to steal. Stop it. You know, that ain't happening like that. But I mean, I'm always open to engagement.
And I would just like to add to it is that, you know, yes, it's not, we're not compromising. We're not going to compromise. We won't compromise.
Sin
but
is sin.
we do believe in the power of God and in the power of Jesus.
Absolutely.
So I'm not going to close my doors on you to allow you to come in when the power of God may just work on you while you're there. And and even if he doesn't, you don't have to you don't have to be a Christian to do the work of the community. You don't have to be a member of Progressive to organize power and to sustain to get policies changed. You can come and we can still work together and work hand in hand in changing our community without you becoming a member of my church. And I think that's one of the problems is we're not, like you said, we're not getting these people together. That thing with, those 30 men coming together. I mean, you don't have to be a member. Nah, come on, let's talk, because you got some issues as a non-Christian, just like I got some issues as a pastor. We all got some issues.
Most of them are the same.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Every pastor with the reality that there are people outside the church who are struggling with the various beliefs and doctrines, and of course living all the standards that we're supposed to live. And there are people inside the church in the same boat. I know who I'm preaching to.
Absolutely.
I'm not delusional. And which is funny because it makes me laugh when I hear that whole phony, because I'm in a church full of folk talking about, I'm still working on me. I'm still a work in progress. I got issues. That's I don't know where these people are who think they're perfect.
Mhm.
I ain't mad
But
at
I feel like that's just a prevailing, don't go there. They all think they perfect. I'm like, what? Because they didn't lay out all their sluttiness to you? Like they didn't is that what's going to convince you if I just embarrass myself and just let me just pull out some old pictures or something?
Well, I mean, you have to understand that they're not. I mean, do you not see how half the scandals that go on in the church with half the pastors?
Even the old ones get different last names. We see this. We burying them. So I mean, to your point, Lea. Yeah, she's cracking up. But to your point, every pastor is gonna have. And okay, so here's a different thing. Churches do have a timeline, and they look at somebody who's coming like, oh, she's been coming 6 months. She ain't saved yet. She ain't joined yet. She don't want to be a part. She don't want to be baptized. People can't help that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a human inclination that we all have to wrestle with. Mm-hmm. That in any religious or belief-based or philosophy-based organization or endeavor, there's this idea that after so long, anybody who's hanging around is supposed to get on board, like fully. And that's what led these poor parents to push their kids down the aisle, because nobody wanted to feel left out, because that was the expectation. Absolutely. I think now the leash is getting longer. Yeah, that's what I think. I think the leash is getting longer.
And I think in post-pandemic pastoring is going to even have to be longer.
I take anybody. No, I'm joking. But go ahead. Because you're the interviewer now, so you take the last 10 minutes and interview us. I mean, because these are good questions.
I mean, I don't know. Again, if we're talking about that whole bridging Black culture and Black, I just think that's the other thing is just we can't be, a Black church and just not Black. Can't be Black during just Black History Month.
Absolutely.
You can't just throw on your dashiki on the last Sunday of Black History Month and it's just not going to resonate. So I honestly think so. You even kind of lay it in with a statistic that said that we have the most people who will leave, but also the most people who will end up coming back. And I think that because what we find out, and I think that's what we find out in that middle group, is that we'll go searching, but what's the alternative? And even people with me, it's just okay, in the back of my mind, I'm going to be negotiating some of these different things that I hear. But what will be the alternative? Because we still know that you can say there, as much as I love nature and as much as I can find my entire piece is being out in nature, there is still something about being around other positive people. and about bringing your family up around other in an atmosphere and that positive energy. So, but if the church is not kind of negotiating blackness and being black 365, I think that's where you're going to lose a lot of the in between, just because we just not going to come and listen to the same thing. We just really, if you're not black 365, you're not going to catch a lot of us.
Right. You know, one thing I would end with as we shut down is, and I don't want to say her name wrong, Kim Yetta. I think we have to contend in a mature way that a lot of the things, you can put it up, Mike, a lot of the things that because it's a charge against the church, we're nosy and judgmental, we're hypocrites, we're this. We need to charge that to be honest. And this is just me, and you don't have to agree. I'm good for an argument, but that is a human nature, not a Christian nature. Humans are nosy, humans are judgmental, humans are hypocrites. I often say, if you believe in a perfect God, hypocrisy comes with the package, because it just is. It just does. There is always a growing in that. And that, I think that's become one of the throw-offs. As if I don't scroll Facebook every day and see people who don't go to church behave in nosy, judgmental, and hypocritical manners, and can't wait to share the latest dip. Where's the latest scandalous video? Whose kids are bad? Who is shiesty? Who stole somebody else's man? I'm like, how about we admit that's just human behavior? And yes, we expect better out of people who claim a certain belief. But at the same time, those same people are often the first to admit that's why we're pursuing this belief, is because we want to be better people. And this particular faith expression is how we are pursuing that. And I feel like there's a place of maturity we have to get to as Black people now that we're working out the African discovery, our roots, our ancestors. You said a great thing earlier, pre-Christian alongside Christianity. We know Christianity was present in different forms and formats in Africa, not what we practice today. It is not the same. We might as well stop pretending. They were not having church in robes and stuff and hooping and hollering and walking on pews. They weren't doing that. But there was the belief in Christ, and there were sacraments and things happening. But a maturity allows you to see all of those historically, the messy path that all of humanity follows, right, that Black people and Christianity are interwoven with, and that we have to wrestle with that for ourselves instead of just leaning on cliches so that we can always say what we're not a part of or don't believe in, but can't describe at all what we actually are a part of and do believe in. Like right. If it helps me have morals and values, which again, I'll say it back, some of our families and our people need it. And I'm almost feeling like we're going back to a wild day where some people need the constraint of a religion. They need something, at least until they come into a greater consciousness or ideal of self. Like you need somebody to help you see the guidelines, because apparently, if you haven't noticed, if you haven't seen the way kids are sharing crazy, I mean, you got kids sharing their private parts at 7 and 8 years old. You got, grandparents partying with their grandkids in bars. You have excusing everything, no matter how destructive it is. At some point, if you haven't found a moral center outside the church, you might want to revisit and see if, mess aside, you can find some morality in the church.
Here's the dichotomy to this whole conversation, Pastor Todd. And I love everything that Sister Lea said, but the dichotomy is we are thankful and we are grateful for people like Sister Lea and for the advice and the what she brings to the church. But we also have another group of Black people who don't want the Blackness in church. They don't want the historic. They don't want to even sing the Black national anthem anymore. They don't want, they want praise and worship, and they want, they want the lights, and they want this.
Everybody. We gotta love everybody.
And so us as pastors have to try to, I don't know, not even divide our time, but, try to deal with those train of people and those who want this Black power type thing. And it's very stressful. It's very stressful, and it's mostly the younger folk. It's mostly the younger folk, to be honest with you, who
There's some older ones too, man. I've got a few that I'm like, did you like just get tired of black people all of a sudden? like the black community and black church gave them everything, and then they're just like, you know what? Let me try this flavor for the last 5 years of my life. And they hanging out with Susan and Karen, and I mean, I'm not disrespecting that, but I do think that these conversations are needed, and that hopefully pastors like Jeff and I, and there are many others, will keep having that conversation with the people that would respectfully be able to engage. And I like how you use that word, negotiate, because that's what it is. That doesn't mean we're compromising saints of the Most High God. We're not compromising our faith. Right. We're negotiating our world in light of our faith, right, and how we can connect with our world. I love it. And nobody's being asked to not be a Christian. Now, I know there's people out there that think we shouldn't be. Now, I have one last question for you. I know we're over time, but this has really been good. I'm like, really, when people say white man's religion, I've come to a place that I worry that religion is the only place. And again, maybe it's just because it's rhetoric and cliche. I got black woke brothers talking about playing the white man's stock market and getting rich in the white man's corporate ladder and getting the white man's degrees. We'll smoke the white man's weed and drink the white man's liquor. Spent all their money at the white man's
casino.
NBA All-Star Weekend, bet on the white man's Super Bowl, and then say, I ain't about to believe in no white man's Jesus. That strikes me as hypocritical.
Make it make sense.
That strikes me as hypocritical, because which one of these systems are not tools or have been tools of the white man's oppression? We were literally product on the white man's stock market.
Absolutely.
In the same way that the white version of Christianity was used to oppress, so was the white financial system that benefited from it, that we think we're about to make some ducats off of. So do you see a hypocrisy there? Because I do.
Not like a capitalistic hotep. Those are wonderful conversations with capitalistic hoteps. But the reality of the situation is all perception. I said that before. So when people talk about the white man's religion, I mean, the same Bible that they claim was used to enslave, Nat Turner used that same Bible for insurrection. So it's all in perception, right? So and regardless as to, you know, I honestly believe that majority of the people, that's just a tagline at this point. Like at some point, this would be my advice, is that like 2 points I would make to Pastor Jeff and to you. Pastor Jeff said something where he's like, you know, we got to negotiate both of these. I would push back on that a little bit and just say, be yourself. And whoever's supposed to be in your church is going to come, because people who are not in the church know that there's that balance going on and it feels inauthentic. So my thing would just say, like, if you a pastor that's like about, you know, if you a Jeremiah Wright, be a Jeremiah Wright, and you know you're gonna get some Jeremiah Wright folk. If you a pastor who's more moderate, be moderate and you'll get moderate folk. But I think the problem comes in is when you know people, and that's in general. That's whether I'm in administration, if this is what I stand on in my school, once I start trying to negotiate between, I gotta try and make the teachers happy. I gotta try and look, like I know that's part of management, but at the same time, it's just like, I'm gonna lose my vision if I keep that up too much, and I'm gonna lose the vision of what I basically stand on. So right. I would just say that as far as that, and I would, again, I think there's too much emphasis being placed on the meme spreaders. Like I went to Pan-African Studies when I was 18 years old. I'm 43 years old now. So y'all talking to me about Frances Cress Welsing. I read that 20 years ago. You can't tell me about Frances Cress Welsing, and you honestly think you saying something by saying something that Frances Cress Welsing has said. And there's been a litany of people who have nuanced what she has said, and y'all still spitting Frances Cress Welsing. Y'all spitting like they came before, read that, like they just now coming into it and swear they woke, and y'all regurgitating the same old 60s books that people read, like Gil Scott Heron and them read before me. So I think the meme spreaders and the ones that's just like really, really aggressive, them is the ones you just got to kind of ignore. because they just gonna be antagonistic to be antagonistic. Because some of the stuff they say, I just look at it like you're not adding anything new to this conversation. No nuance, no new perspective. There's nothing you're saying that's gonna grow anything. So if I was y'all, I would literally focus on, you know, really again reaching out to. And I've seen a couple of the comments that's like, you know, you don't negotiate with Christ. I don't think it's really negotiating with Christ, but unless, you know, people see the Christ thing, because I think there's a lot of us in that middle ground that know God when we see it. And unless we seeing the God in you, like as a person, and I mean, it is what it is. You're just not going to, you know, we may potentially come to church and commit, but if you never get us to even come back in the door in a real authentic way, then I mean, that's part of growing it. It's not, I think sometimes you do have to, you know, think about what it is that we saying to people, because again, I've been disenchanted, really honestly been disenchanted with just some of the things that's just like, I think the way that things are taught, like for example, and I don't want to go too long. My daughter had a friend, she was in kindergarten. I never can forget, this little boy cried and cried and cried. And he said, my bunny was dying and I prayed to God all night. My bunny ain't getting no better. And I was thinking like, oh baby, somebody is teaching you really wrong about how God, God don't work like that, baby. But I wanted to tell him that, but he literally was like, I prayed, but my bunny ain't getting no better. And I honestly think that that's literally where grown people think that's how God works. And we got to like move the narrative to I don't know. I don't have the answers. I just know how people like me think. And I run across people that really think like that little boy and his bunny, because that's literally how they've been taught. And when they find out that that's not how God works, they just get mad and angry and move away from it because they don't feel like it's adding into their life none.
You know, one thing I'm hearing from Lea, and we are way over time, so Mike's about to beat us up. But our churches, and maybe me and you, Jeff, we should think more critically about this. Teaching does happen, and it's an epidemic in the church with members. We have very shallow members who never actually show up where things are being taught, because all they do is come to church where songs are being sung. Preacher's going to say a few good things for 20 minutes, and then we get excited in black and we sing in the rest of the sermon too. But there's a lot of realism, and I can only speak for myself and Pastor Jeff. There is a lot of realism and balance that comes when I'm just sitting on that stool on Wednesday night.
Absolutely.
And just talking through basic. I call my Bible study life builders. And I'm not saying this in a compromising way, but you could take Christ out of what I was saying and in many ways still grow, hopefully get some advice, because we're just talking about life. And even, like I said, because there's such a breach, and that's the way I'll end, because we have breached so far, and it is largely the church's fault, and then toxic culture can have a place in that. The reasonableness and the balance that has developed in the church is not being heard. There is more reasonable, balanced, critical thinking applied to scripture with the same spiritual power.
Yes.
We are not denying the spirit that we believe in Jesus Christ, but we are literally saying the stuff that you're saying. Y'all, we was raised taught this, and I give respect to my elders, but this scripture was really kind of turned.
Yes.
I said that about a scripture today. The violent taken by force is not a scripture about Christians being violent and being aggressive. It just means that suffering is a part of life, and people who hate you will use violence against you. And some Christians, martyrs, whatever, might have lived through that. But people took that and flipped it and said, I got to clap back. So I think teaching moments need to be more prominent with us, and finding spaces and places of just spiritual conversation. Like, I'm not here for the toxic. Do not show up with a library like, well, what about this? You know, with some book I never read before. I'm not here to like tell you where the dinosaurs came from and why they're not here anymore. I'm not here for that. But I am here to just talk out life. Like, let's just talk out life and faith and have that conversation.
There is something about Muslim services. And I don't know about Orthodox Muslim, but I've been to quite a few Nation of Islam services. They are void of a lot of the shouting and stuff. Yeah. And it really is teaching. And I think that you're hitting the nail on the head. Like, there needs to be an aspect of that, and to basically teach and show people, you know, people like in that middle where they can really grab the meat, and to temper some of the performative stereotypes.
Oh, I'm a holler. I'm gonna keep walking on pews. I'm going. I did some screaming today. It cracks me up. This is a religiously incorrect record. We finally outlasted Jeff because he drank 1.5 teas during the show. Don't you know you're not supposed to walk in church? All right, let's give it up for Lea for being with us. We are way over time. So Lea, you are responsible for going over our preacher time. You made church go too long. Sunday night service never goes this long. So not only did we start a minute late, which is super Black, but we went longer than we said, which is super Black. And I guess my co-host is just gone now, which is super Black. So thank you so much for being with us, Lea. We appreciate you. To everybody watching, thanks for tuning in. Keep giving your comments, your questions. We might have her back on and a recap some other time. But everybody have a great night. Enjoy President's Day. Y'all take care. God bless.
Bye. Say hi.